The Arctic, one of the last places on Earth where nature still imposes her formidable law. Yet adventurers the world over are drawn to this icy wasteland as if by some magnetic force. Extreme in every sense of the word, the Great North confronts these brave souls with daunting challenges that will push them to surpass their limits. The majestic Arctic wilderness does not reveal its secrets lightly. The crew of the French sailboat Vagabond is fulfilling the dream of a lifetime. Eric Brossier is the head of the expedition and Vagabond's captain. Gérard Guérin is an adventurer and its chief mechanic. And France Pinson-Ducel, a true polar veteran, is her co-skipper and Eric's partner. Their 14-meter-long steel boat, the Vagabond, has a low draft and was specially designed to sail through Arctic floating ice. 1 year ago, in May of 2002, the Vagabond set out from the coast of Brittany in France to circumnavigate the North Pole. They have already successfully completed the Northeast Passage from Murmansk through the Bering Straits off the coast of Siberia, the first sailing vessel to do so in one summer without the help of an icebreaker. Now, in spring of 2003, they are about to undertake the second and most challenging leg of their 2-year voyage, the Northwest Passage. Not only will the crew experience all the wonders of the Arctic, their voyage will retrace the footsteps of great explorers like Sir John Franklin, Roald Amundsen, and Henry Larsen. For modern-day Arctic adventurers, these are the figures that inspire them to confront the challenges of the Great North. For more than 3 centuries, explorers sought to discover the Northwest Passage that would finally allow ships to sail for the Far East and the Pacific through this continent of ice. Of all these Arctic expeditions, the story of Sir John Franklin is no doubt the most tragic. Departing in 1845 with his 2 vessels, the Terror and the Erebus, to search for the Northwest Passage, his entire 134-man expedition seemingly vanished from the face of the Earth. But true adventurers are never deterred by such omens. One such person was Norwegian captain Roald Amundsen. On June 16, 1903, Amundsen leaves the Norwegian port of De Christiania for Greenland in the middle of the night to flee his creditors. For the next 3 years, Amundsen and his small 6-man crew and 17 dogs make their home on the Gjoa, a refitted 47-ton fishing boat with a 13-horsepower engine and a reinforced hull. After 2 years of scientific experiments, they continue west, finally crossing the Bering Strait in August 1905. Amundsen and his men go down in history as the first to navigate a vessel through the Northwest Passage. A century later, on July 11, 2003, Vagabond enters the Bering Strait, retracing Amundsen's steps in reverse. From now, they have a period of a little over 2 months to make their way to the Atlantic Ocean over 3,000 kilometers away. Any greater delay could mean spending the long Arctic winter trapped in the ice.
Bienvenue dans l'Arctique, hein. Première glace du passage du Nord-Ouest.
Most early Arctic explorers attempted the Northwest Passage from east to west. Whereas for them, the waters of the Bering Strait were the last lap of a long journey, for the Vagabond, they herald the start of a voyage into the unknown. One legendary vessel that also started its crossing from the west was Henry Larsen's St. Roch, built for the Royal Canadian Mounted Police in 1928, The 32-meter-long vessel served as a floating police detachment and supply boat for Arctic outposts. In June of 1940, during the Second World War, the St. Roch leaves Vancouver to sail to Halifax by way of the Northwest Passage. This historic voyage aimed to establish Canadian sovereignty in the Arctic. Following the same route taken by the St. Roch, the Vagabond set sail for Point Barrow in Alaska, the last frontier of the United States.
Monday, chance of rain and snow. Southwest wind 20 miles per hour, temperatures 35 to 40 miles per hour.
Vagabond is fully equipped with the latest technologies: satellite phone, GPS, and specialized computer equipment that enables her crew to obtain up-to-the-minute data on weather and sailing conditions.
Pluie, neige, brouillard. Ça va faire chaud.
Running 32 to 42 degrees.
Ce qui est sûr, c'est que ça peut bouger la glace, tu vois, un peu comme ça, la ramener sur la côte. Le bord sera pas agréable, quoi.
C'est incroyable qu'on ne s'est jamais pelé comme ça, même pendant le nord-est.
This year, conditions in the Arctic are particularly difficult and unpredictable. Global warming has contributed to melting ice caps and rapidly changing weather patterns, making any vessel attempting the passage even more dependent on precise measurements and forecasts. The crew of the Vagabond stops by the NOAA weather station in Point Barrow to find out more about the region's weather projections and to put a face to the voice that keeps them informed on a daily basis. Point Barrow, the northernmost settlement in Alaska, was a major whaling port in the late 1800s. The whales were prized for their oil and especially their baleen, or whalebone, essential in the manufacture of many objects because of its extraordinary flexibility. Whalers from Great Britain, Scandinavia, and the American East Coast took the long way around the tips of South America or South Africa in order to reach the fertile hunting grounds of the Pacific North. Voyages lasted up to 5 years, with as many as 30 boats at a time anchored in the bay. The development of oil-based products largely put a stop to commercial whale hunting. Today, the only hunters left are the Inuit, continuing a long ancestral tradition. Located 540 kilometers from the Arctic Circle, Point Barrow, with its 4,500 residents, is worlds apart from the small whaling village that thrived here a century ago. Although oil exploration has brought new affluence to the region, as one of the largest Inuit colonies on the planet, inhabitants in many respects still adhere to a traditional way of life. Americans established a meteorological station dedicated to the study of the Arctic here in 1881. France and Eric have come here to find out about the state of the ice pack before leaving Barrow.
Your first piece of ice will be in near Tangent Point, Pitt Point, just before you get to Cape Halkett.
Yes.
And when you start stretching into northern Canada and the Northwest Territories, now comes the hardest and most concentrated ice. Lots of first-year medium thick ice, very strong, very thick ice that'll, it's not good for any kind of marine vessels.
The forecast for the next few days doesn't look good. The prevailing winds are pushing the ice pack closer and closer to the shoreline. Nevertheless, on July 26, Vagabond leaves Point Barrow and heads towards Herschel Island, a small strip of land once home to many whalers in a bygone era. Navigation in the Arctic requires great skill and experience. The only possible route for a sailboat is the narrow strip of water that opens up near the coastline during the short boreal summer. But nautical maps offer scant data and the ice pack is in constant flux, subject to the fickle whims of the winds and currents.
Soit tu tournes là à droite un peu, soit à gauche. Plus loin là-bas, au fond, il y a une bande d'olive, alors que là, c'est tout encombré. Là. C'est à 300 mètres, quoi.
Contact.
Vagabond isn't alone in her search for the Northwest Passage.
This Vagabond, Norwegian Blue Vagabond, how do you read?
Hi there, Eric. Very thankful to be here, but just
Norwegian Blue, a British sailboat having left the warm waters of Tahiti and New Zealand 2 months earlier, has been a constant radio companion since Point Barrow. Favourable ice conditions have given her a 10-day advantage over Vagabond in their good-natured race to be the first to reach Baffin Bay. 2 other sailboats, Dagmar Ayen and Polar Bound, are also attempting the Northwest Passage this year. Each member of the crew has a crucial role to play in polar navigation. While Eric steers a course through the water, Gerard and France use boat hooks to keep the ice floes away from the hull. Vagabond leaves American waters for Canadian territory as she crosses the border between Alaska and the Yukon. In the middle of the drifting ice floe, Vagabond makes her way towards Herschel Island, named after the renowned British astronomer William Herschel by Sir John Franklin. According to maritime law, a ship must identify itself upon entering Canadian territory. Vagabond's crew announces her presence to Herschel Island's solitary ranger, Richard, who travels to and from this remote outpost by floatplane, boat, or even snowmobile, depending on the season. The town is abnormally flooded, another example of the chaotic weather in the region this year. Shin-deep in water, France, Eric and Gerard meet up with Richard in front of a monument dedicated to the whalers. He takes them to see the humble homes of former whalers, many who spent 9 months a year blocked in the snow and ice. Of particular interest to the sailors is the house where the St. Roch's crew left their mark on the front door.
This is the original stuff.
Ah, yes?
And he lived in
He was wintering with the boat.
yeah.
From 1928 onward, the St. Roch participated in the annual changing of the guard on Herschel Island. During the busy whaling era, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police made regular trips north to assert Canadian authority. During Amundsen's time between 1903 and 1906, Herschel Island was home to some 1,500 whalers. Since the sailing season was so short and their home ports were as far away as Great Britain and Scandinavia, the whalers wanted to overwinter to be close to the hunting area when the ice broke up. Promiscuity with the Inuits, alcohol, extreme winter conditions, boredom, the endless polar nights all provoke serious social problems. This small whaling village preserves many painful scars of the dramas that unfolded here.
Moi j'ose pas ramasser les trucs là, par correction.
Eric and France crossed the island on foot to examine the state of the sea and the ice pack, just as Amundsen did a century earlier. From high atop this island on July 13th, 1906, Amundsen must have witnessed the same impressive view of the horizon. The Norwegian explorer wintered at nearby Kings Point before completing the first transit of the Northwest Passage in 1903 to 1906. The ice pack forms a solid mass to the north, but reports of an upcoming storm have raised hopes that strong winds could open up a route to their next destination of Cambridge Bay, 600 kilometers away.
Ça chauffe de plus en plus. Ça va passer les 50 nœuds.
Des vagues qui se lèvent là. Se lèvent tout près de la côte.
Il faut lever en 2 minutes.
Ouais, avec la chaîne, il commence à faire des rappels comme ça.
45-knot winds lash the harbor. As they intensify, the swell breaks up the ice, pushing it rapidly to the north. Vagabond takes a beating. Her anchor starts to slip. Urgent action is necessary. hands numb with frost, they hoist the anchor. The weather window is tight, so they must move quickly. The winds could turn at any moment, bringing the ice back to shore. On August 8th, within hours of leaving Herschel Island, the winds changed direction, pushing the ice floe back towards the Vagabond. Grinding sounds of ice on metal can be heard from below.
Putain, merde. Oh putain, merde. C'est pas bon là.
Like a cork popping from a bottle of champagne, Vagabond is hoisted onto the ice by the enormous pressure exerted on her hull.
Tirez sur le mât?
Le safran, il est comment par rapport à ça? Il retient pas, j'espère, au moins.
On est embouté sur le safran là.
Ah ouais?
Ouais, non, il est posé là.
Ah putain! On a embarqué sur une glace.
Vagabond could tip over at any moment. To reduce the risk, Gerald must rig a rope to the top of the mast, securing the vessel to the ice floe. But climbing the mast under these conditions is not for the faint of heart. Despite the 40-knot winds, the boat now seems to be stable. The crew can breathe a bit easier, but they know that the danger is by no means over.
Go ahead for Vagabond. Is that Richard? Over.
Richard checks in on Vagabond by radio as a Coast Guard helicopter flies overhead.
Anybody, just tell them everything is okay on board. Everything is okay. Over.
Okay then, yeah. Okay, we'll keep it fine.
In this remote part of the world, it's always a relief to know that someone is watching out for you. This spirit of cooperation is a key trait of the people of the North.
16, over.
Vagabond is in a paradoxical situation. If a storm comes, the pressure of the ice could rip her hull apart. But only strong winds and currents can push the ice apart and release her from its grip. Every day lost here is one day less to reach the Atlantic Ocean before winter sets in. With no way of knowing how long they'll be stuck on the ice, the crew of the Vagabond makes the best of the situation. France, a watercolorist by profession, has taken advantage of the kind weather to record for posterity this once-in-a-lifetime experience.
Inuvik Coast Guard's radio, this is Vagabond 16, over.
Roger. The Weather Center is stating that your window of opportunity is tonight and until tomorrow.
Encore droit à une sieste.
That will
Coast Guard weather reports have made it clear that the window of opportunity for the trip to Cambridge Bay is closing rapidly. Fortunately, the ice floes trapping the Vagabond are beginning to drift apart. The same unpredictable forces of wind and current that have held them hostage for 3 harrowing days are now releasing them from their grip.
Rentrer dans le parc un peu à gauche, il n'y a que là où il y a un peu d'eau libre à la gauche, quoi. Il faut y aller, hein.
C'est un peu juste là.
Cambridge Bay is a small Inuit village on Victoria Island, where the crew plans to stock up on supplies for the rest of their voyage. As Vagabond sails across the waters of Franklin Bay, memories of the missing sailor whose name it bears are ever present. For 48 hours, Vagabond slaloms along searching for an opening in the pack. She is forced to take a roundabout route, weaving her way in and around immense expanses of ice before finally being able to continue her eastward passage.
Ah ouais? Oh, quête un peu si tu vois pas l'ours lui-même. Ce serait cool d'en voir un quand même.
Il est là, plus à droite. Là. Voilà, on va pouvoir s'en approcher.
Tu prendras des photos de là-haut, Eric?
The polar bear, known as Nanook in the Inuit language, reigns supreme over the glacial Arctic wilderness. The region's largest land carnivore, the animal knows no predator except for man. A tireless swimmer, a patient and determined seal hunter, it is protected by the warmest fur of the animal kingdom. Sadly, despite its magnificence and strength, the polar bear is now facing extinction. The animal's habitat is shrinking due to global warming, and its role as ultimate predator makes it vulnerable to the deadly toxins in the Arctic food chain.
Ça a été la star quand même du jour de la journée.
Allez, salut. Salut l'ami. Salut Nanook.
August 19th, 10 p.m. The lights of Cambridge Bay sparkle in the distance. This small hamlet on the southeast shore of Victoria Island in Canada's Nunavut territory is home to a population of 1,600 people, of which 72% are Inuit.
Hi, hello.
I'm France.
Peter.
Very nice to meet you.
Yeah.
After your voice.
That's right, we hear the voice and now we can put the faces onto it.
Vagabond's crew is happy to meet Peter Samochuk, a local radio enthusiast keeping both Vagabond and Norwegian Blue informed on sailing conditions.
Recognize me on Vagabond, over.
Oh, you're on Vagabond, all right?
How are things in Joe Haven?
Yeah, pretty good, actually. I'll tell you what, do you want to go up?
Norwegian Blue lies in dock at Yow Haven, further along the route. They've maintained their lead, but the ice in Franklin Strait and Larsen Sound are preventing them from going any further.
Please don't change your plan. It'd be nice to meet you there. Over.
Yeah, I think, no, if you're leaving, we'll definitely wait till you get here. It'll be great, please.
Cambridge Bay has never forgotten the St. Rock, the diesel-powered RCMP supply boat that served as an all-purpose roving outpost in the Arctic. After 12 years of routine service, captained by Henry Lawson, she stopped over here in August of 1941 before continuing east on her great voyage through the Northwest Passage. Vagabond's crew learns of another historic vessel in the vicinity. Not far from the coast lies the wreck of the Maud, Roald Amundsen's second great Arctic vessel, in which he navigated the Northeast Passage from Norway to Siberia. Eric decides to go and take a closer look at the sunken ship. The wooden boat is surprisingly well preserved, perhaps due to the absence of bacteria in the frozen waters. Maud was constructed in Oslo, Norway for Amundsen in 1917. Built to his specifications, it represented his vision of the ideal Arctic research vessel. In June of 1918, to flee German submarines, the Maud sets out for North America by way of Russia through the Northeast Passage. In the summer of 1920, Amundsen reaches Nome, Alaska, becoming the first to circumnavigate the Arctic. Purchased by the Canadian Hudson's Bay Company in 1925, she sinks at her moorings in Cambridge Bay in the winter of 1930, where she rests to this day. It's August 22nd. Only 30 days of summer remain. Vagabond has been restocked with 4,000 litres of fuel. If her journey is to be completed before winter, she must set sail right away. But first, the crew cannot resist making a small detour to Franklin Point on King William Island, near the last recorded coordinates of Sir John Franklin's ill-fated expedition. In 15-knot winds, outfitted in her finest regalia, the Vagabond makes her way to a place rich in history. Franklin Point straight ahead. Few boats have ever ventured into these waters. The nautical map shows virgin territory. Vagabond's crew is respectfully quiet as they approach the watery tomb where Franklin and his 2 boats mysteriously disappeared. John Franklin is 60 years old when the British Admiralty entrusts him with 2 state-of-the-art steam-powered sailing vessels, the Terror and the Erebus. With a metre-thick hull and steel-reinforced bow, the ships were perfectly equipped to deal with the Arctic conditions. On May 19, 1845, Franklin and his 134-person crew leave London with 3 years' worth of provisions. Last seen by whalers in Baffin Bay on June 26th, their ultimate fate would remain a complete mystery for over a decade. News of Franklin's expedition was expected in Great Britain by 1847. The following year, concerned officials of the Royal Navy offer a reward of £20,000 for Franklin's rescue. The disappearance of the Royal Navy vessels provokes the longest and the most costly rescue mission of all time. Lady Franklin moves heaven and earth in her search for her missing husband, using her own personal fortune to equip ships for the rescue. Over 2,000 men and 40 vessels participate in the search over the following decade. Finally, in 1859, Captain Francis McClintock's 4th expedition uncovers concrete evidence of Franklin's fate. His lieutenant discovers a metal box buried in a cairn at the far end of Cape Victoria. Inside, he finds a message confirming Franklin's death on June 11, 1847. A second, written by Captain Crozier, stated that he and his remaining crew of 100 men had abandoned the Terror and Erebus and were heading south in the hope of finding help. None survived. In 1981, anthropologist Owen Beatty and a team of scientists uncovers 3 remarkably well-preserved bodies on Beechey Island where the Franklin expedition spent their first winter. One theory is that the sailors developed lead poisoning from the primitive soldering used to can their food supplies, contributing to their demise. The Inuits say that the white man resorted to cannibalism before they died, and their elders believe that their spirits wander King William Island to this day. From Franklin Point, the Vagabond veers full south towards Gow Haven. This will be their final stopover before attempting the most challenging stretch of their journey, the crossing of both the Franklin and Bellot Straits.
Et alors notre ami Norwegian Blue. Ah, je vois un mât qui dépasse, ouais.
C'est un bout de vieux de voilier. Ils sont partis 2 jours avant nous de Barrow. Ils sont là depuis 10 jours.
Ah, les gamins sur la plage, ils s'éclatent là.
Norwegian Blue is stuck in Gow Haven. The route to the north is so densely packed with ice this year that icebreakers are the only vessels that are able to get through.
No, the president of the club, of the golf club, gave me...
Norwegian Blues skipper Woody, Zoe, his fiancée, and Peter, father to Woody and a devoted crew member, have come to meet up with their friends on the Vagabond.
Still some to go, huh?
Almost 100 years earlier, on September 12, 1903, Amundsen discovers this small natural harbour on King William Island, which he names after his boat, the Gjawa. Extremely well protected from the elements, it has the advantage of being close to the magnetic North Pole, as located by James Clark Ross in 1830. Amundsen hopes to verify if it is still in the same place. During his 2 consecutive winters here, he observes the natives for whom he has great admiration. He analyzes their survival skills and the reasons why they are more effective than European methods. He studies their eating and clothing habits and learns to drive dog sleds and build igloos. Using these new techniques, his extensive explorations established that the magnetic North Pole has shifted, proof positive that the core of the Earth is in constant motion. During his stay in Gjáhaven, Amundsen takes up with an Inuit woman who bears him a son, Luke Ikwelak, who later fathers 3 children. Many more natives now claim to be descendants of Amundsen. Once a year, Gjáhaven is restocked by barges loaded with fuel and containers filled with every commodity imaginable for the long winter to come. A constant stream of activity takes place as the village's 900 inhabitants help to unload the containers.
My name is Jimmy Uhulek Paulusi. I'm a descendant Roald Amundsen from Norway. And lots of descendants here from Roald Amundsen in Gjáhaven. Great explorer. Viking. Roald Amundsen said, this little harbor that we have here, this was the most beautiful little harbor in the world. And I agree, it's a beautiful harbor.
Dressed in full ceremonial regalia, one of Gjáhaven's 2 Mounties has come to bid the crew of the Vagabond farewell.
Cher monsieur, quel honneur! Ça me fait plaisir. Nice, very nice.
Norwegian Blue, Vagabond.
Vagabond, just about to call you.
Au revoir. Cheers to all, thanks to all.
À bientôt dans la glace, quoi.
On August 30th, after 3 months at sea, Vagabond sets her sights on the Bering Strait, 200 kilometers away. If they manage to make it through this final great obstacle, a successful northwest passage is almost assured. But blocking the way up ahead is a dense pack of ice in Franklin Strait and Larsen Sound. The 2 boats have decided to get as close as possible in order to take advantage of any change in weather that might open a way through. Leaving the safety of Gjáhaven behind is not without risk. If the weather takes a turn for the worse and the freeze-up comes early, they could be forced to spend the winter trapped in the ice. Although they have prepared in every possible way for this prospect, the fate of Sir John Franklin reminds them that the Arctic offers no guarantees. The ice appears to be getting denser up ahead. Vagabond's strong steel hull is well adapted to these conditions, so she leads the way with the lighter, more fragile Norwegian Blue in her wake. With night approaching and the conditions worsening, Norwegian Blue's skipper Woody decides to turn back to find refuge close to shore. But Eric decides to risk it, and Vagabond continues alone through the drifting chunks of ice.
Je vais tout droit là et je pousse, Eric, c'est ça que tu dis?
Yeah, you have a nice place, so in a nice shelter in Weld Harbour, over.
Yeah, we went right up to the end, the very, very end, there's a little bay.
Okay, good, and you're not planning to try again tomorrow, I suppose you're waiting for southeast wind, if I understood correct, over?
Yeah, I think so.
And watch out for polar bears, we saw one on the ice, we know there is, so that's, yeah, just be careful, over.
Yeah, we will, we have a gun, not really want to use it, but we'll take it up with it, maybe some flares or something as well.
The silence of the Arctic night is disturbed by creaks and groans coming from beneath the hull. The crew wakes up to find that the boat is trapped in the ice. Fearful for the battering the boat has taken since it left Gowhaven, Eric decides to go take a closer look down below.
On va me laisser voir les hélices tranquilles. Vale, c'est bon, je suis chaud là.
The propellers are banged up from numerous collisions with blocks of ice, but still appear to be in good working condition.
On subit la dérive et puis on verra bien, mais on part à 1 nœud 4 de courant en sens inverse là.
For 3 days and 4 nights, Vagabond drifts dozens of miles at the mercy of the currents in its prison of ice. On September 4th, sensing a weakening in the pack's grip, Eric manages to make his way out to the south. The crew decides to go back and rejoin Norwegian Blue before deciding whether to make another attempt together.
Ça va toucher dur.
On a fait presque 2000 par rapport à ce matin en plein neige.
Norwegian Blue is awaiting them in Weld Harbour. The British team salutes their arrival by raising their flag.
Yeah, thanks again there, Peter, and we'll speak to you again tomorrow, and I hope you have a good evening there, and everybody else as well, and Norwegian Blue clear.
So what's your plan?
It's a difficult decision, a very difficult decision.
I think wintering here or in Bering Strait about the same. So there is the main difference is there is a hut there in case you have problem on board.
It's just the Bering Strait is dangerous and very heavy ice and big currents, and we may be able to come back.
Yeah. So we don't want to get trapped again, but we know also we could get trapped still. So this is a risk. Yeah.
Just like the Vagabond, 62 years earlier, the crew of the St. Roch found itself blocked by the ice and took refuge at nearby Passley Bay. When his second-in-command perishes, Captain Henry Larsen sets out for the nearest village 800 kilometers away to look for a priest. They return 2 months later, and Larsen is finally able to give his officer a religious burial. The following summer, the St. Roch continues her route east through Lancaster Strait, reaching Halifax, Nova Scotia on Canada's east coast on October 11, 1942. She becomes the second vessel to complete the Northwest Passage and the first from west to east.
Total 1 kilogram. Ferment lactique, you understand? These two made some yogurts. Yeah, okay.
It is now September 6th. With the way ahead totally blocked with ice, the two crews must face the very real possibility that they will spend the winter trapped here. While France and Zoe examine the list of supplies they can trade, Gerard conducts a thorough check of the engine room. Although they topped up on fuel in Cambridge Bay, Gerard fears it still might not be enough to last the winter. Every day, Eric, Woody and Peter make a 4-hour trek round trip to assess the condition of the ice to the north. Again today, it doesn't look good. Winter is closing in. The plants are dying after a short summer. During the night, a herd of musk oxen have approached the shore near the Vagabond. Gerard and France head out to observe these strange Arctic animals at a safe distance. These prehistoric mammals get their name from the strong odor released by males in heat. Their long, thick coats protect them from up to -50-degree temperatures. When faced with danger, the musk oxen form a defensive circle around their young to protect them from their predators, such as the Arctic wolf. It's September 9th. 5 days have already passed since Vagabond's return to Weld Harbor.
En tout cas, ça s'est bien amélioré.
It looks pretty full down to the south. Better to the north, really.
So we must go to the north.
Yeah.
For the first time all year, a lively wind has opened up a route through Larsen Sound and Franklin Strait. Seizing the opportunity, Vagabond and Norwegian Blue set sail towards the Bellot Strait. This could be their only chance to make it through before winter takes them hostage.
D'action, quoi.
We are really afraid if the wind turns west before we reach Parry Channel, then we'll get trapped again. Over.
Ok, c'est parti.
C'est là? Tu veux que je te route?
Vas-y, vas-y. Encore un tout petit peu. Voilà, pile poil, stop pour toi. Impec. Ok, Gérard, tu peux prendre un cap.
The winds have changed, turning to the southeast, gusting up to 50 knots. A storm front is rapidly approaching. The waves throw heavy chunks of ice against Vagabond's hull. But there is no turning back to seek shelter. There might be only hours remaining before the ice reclaims its grip.
The sea was 2-3 meters waves, but still some ice in between, sometimes difficult to see. We had up to 50 knots today, 50 knots, so it was very strong, and Norwegian Blue had to fight long time to get anchorage. Everybody is safe, and the boats are safe, I think, for the night. We'll probably try and sail
The gamble has paid off. Vagabond and Norwegian Blue have ridden out the storm and are through Franklin Strait. The ice is already closing up behind them, blocking the route. There is no turning back. After spending a sleepless night at anchor in Hepburn Point, the two sailboats into the perilous waters of the Bering Strait, 50 kilometers long. With steep cliffs on each side, its narrowness makes for strong currents and treacherous sailing. Separating Somerset Island from the Boothia Peninsula, it marks the most northerly point on the North American mainland. Fearing for her fragile hull, Norwegian Blue has chosen to stick close to the shore despite the dangers of running aground. But the hardier Vagabond has kept to the center of the channel, facing the ice head on. Guided by France in the crow's nest, Eric tries to steer the boat around the heavier chunks of ice borne by a strong 7-knot countercurrent. But even their best efforts cannot prevent the vessel from taking a beating.
Est-ce que tu as vu ce qui se passe quand on essaie d'éviter, quoi? On dérape complètement. Je suis à 2000 tours, on n'avance pas par rapport à la glace. Si je vais à droite, on est mort.
Tout droit, léger droite.
After 6 hours of grueling navigation, bruised and battered by the ice, the Vagabond finally exits the strait. On the shore, a mother bear and her cub appear to salute her accomplishment.
Plusieurs, non?
Fort-Ross, et quand on a Fort-Ross, on sort le gigot de Fort-Ross parce qu'on n'a pas assez vélo. Eh, pas mal quand même, hein?
The Hudson's Bay Company established Fort Ross as a fur trading post in 1937, only to abandon it a mere decade later. Although it has long ago outlived its original purpose, this outpost has since served many generations of Arctic explorers as a refuge from the elements on their travels by land or sea.
Nuage, Mickey, and Sabrina and Pingu on the 10th of September 2002.
This was one of Henry Larsen's final stops on his way to completing the Northwest Passage, and the crew of the Vagabond are proud to leave their mark here as well. After boarding up the cabin to protect it from polar bears, they all return to the Norwegian Blue for a very special occasion. These sailors have a great deal to celebrate. Here at the top of the planet, Zoe's 30th birthday party also marks a key moment in the journey, as both boats are now almost assured of a successful transit of the Northwest Passage. Norwegian Blue and Vagabond must now climb back up the coast of Somerset Island and cross over to the Brodeur Peninsula at the tip of Baffin Island. From there, they'll sail in the direction of Lancaster Sound, the northernmost point of the Northwest Passage. Vagabond lifts anchor at 4:30 a.m. The two cabins of Fort Ross fade into the distance as the moon sinks towards the horizon, giving a surreal, almost magical appearance to the scene. The frigid night air has blanketed the sailboat with a thick, lustrous coat of frost. On September 12th, the French crew approaches Cape York. Around 1600 hours, the two vessels pass the most northerly point in their journey, 73 degrees, 52 minutes, and 23 seconds north. Many miles behind, two other sailboats, the Dagmar Ein and the Polar Bound, are blocked for the winter by the ice in Franklin Strait. Vagabond and Norwegian Blue made their move at exactly the right time, a mere 4 hours later, and the ice would have trapped them as well. As Vagabond and Norwegian Blue enter the waters of Baffin Bay, officially completing the Northwest Passage, the Arctic's ambassador honors them with a final fond farewell. Vagabond has done it. After last year's successful Northeast Passage, she has now conquered the waters of the Canadian Arctic. The historic journey is complete. She has become the first sailboat to circumnavigate the Arctic in 2 summers without the help of an icebreaker. After 17 months and 37,000 kilometers of perilous Arctic adventure, the Vagabond is finally homeward bound.